I'm going to dive into what is the final week in this short 3-week series called Skeptics, Heretics, and Saints. And I've had a few people say, well, what was the idea behind this? What were you thinking when you planned this? And I just want to explain to you that one of the reasons that we did this series was to open up the conversation or open up the dialogue, open up our eyes even to the reality of the ups and the downs and the questions and the struggles of being a person of faith. That there are times when we wrestle, and there's times that we are inconsistent in our faith. There's times when there's an unpredictable nature to our faith. And we wanted to talk about this because we oftentimes think of ourselves as less than in our faith because of something that we have thought about the wrong way. So the first week we talked about skeptics because oftentimes those of us that have questions, those of us that are naturally more skeptical, those of us that are more interested in asking questions and dialoguing, oftentimes if we have sort of a questioning heart in our body, then we think our faith is less robust or it's less powerful, or maybe it is even real faith because we have questions. Or sometimes we don't even think we can be a person of faith until we answer all of our questions. And so in our first week, we just wanted to talk about the idea that there's a certain level of skepticism that's just part of being human. We ask questions, and questions are okay. God is okay with us asking him questions. God is okay with us wrestling with him. He named the Hebrew people. One of the names he gave them was the name Israel, which means wrestles with God. And so the first week, we just wanted to open that up and say, that is a part of our life. That is a part of life. You can ask questions, and oftentimes when we do, our faith grows. And then last week we dove into the second word, which is the word heretics. That word is usually used to describe people who believe something theologically that is different than what the group understanding of the church believes. Now, last week we presented a new idea. We talked about a different idea, and that was that a heretic may just be somebody who chooses not to love others the way that Jesus called us to love others. In fact, I think that in the world that we're living in today, where so many people are genuinely wondering, like, what does it look like to be a Christian? What does it look like to live as a Christian? I think it's important for us to explore the idea that false teaching in our day and age may be a belief in a God without any loving action that is then translated towards the people around us. And so we explored that last week. And this week, we're going to talk about saints, heretics and skeptics and saints. Now, to talk about saints, I think it's good that we remind ourselves of some of the more historic ones. We've got St. Peter. I know some of you were wondering what he looked like. There he is. That's him most of the time. Even when he was fishing, that's what he looked like. There's St. Philomena. I don't know if you guys are familiar with St. Philomena. This is St. Philomena hanging out. Got anchors and arrows. That's her thing. And then there's St. Anthony. Some of you know St. Anthony. You're familiar with St. Anthony. Then there's this guy. There's St. Bradley. St. Brad. I'm here to announce to you. Actually, if you've been here for the whole series, you know that each week I confessed the first week that I can be a skeptic. And I confess that there are times when I am a heretic. And today I want to just go ahead and let you know in your presence, I am also, even though I'm a skeptic and a heretic, I am a saint. Oh, you laugh. You think that's funny. I know you might be surprised by this, especially when you consider this. For most of us, we think about saints, we think about the pictures that I showed, except for one. We think of them in a particular sort of way. We think about them in a Catholic sense, and we think about sainthood. In fact, that's the most dominant way we tend to think about saints when we hear that word. And in order to become a saint, according to the Catholic Church, in that tradition, you have to achieve a certain number of requirements. And so I just want to give them to you real quickly in case you're like me and you're trying to achieve sainthood. Here they are. Number 1, you have to be dead a minimum of 5 years. That's how it starts. Number 2, be a servant of God. Number 3, show proof of a life of heroic virtue. Like, I was so virtuous, it was heroism. There have to be verified miracles done in your name. And then the Pope has to sign off on it. All in the end, it's like, okay, sure. Little ceremony, signs the thing. I don't know if you noticed the list, but I'm struggling with several of them, including number 1. That makes it kind of tough, right? Although several others still a little tough. But when the Pope comes to town, I just want you to let you know we do good coffee together. We go. Okay, there's like 5 of you that just laughed. That's a joke. Some of you are like, he knows the Pope? No, the Pope doesn't come to Spokane and he doesn't know me. But you see this list and you go, okay, well, how can he call himself a saint? How do you look at that and you call yourself a saint? Well, let me just explain this, that even in the Catholic tradition and in Protestant traditions, there is still a broader understanding of the word saint that includes a larger number of people. So that, yes, there are the saints, but then there are saints, lowercase s, and that's a broader definition. Here's the problem. I'm going to read it to you in just a moment, and I still think when you hear me read this to you, and then you witness me stand here before you and claim to be the definition that is here, you're still going to find a problem with me calling myself a saint, because this is what it says. A saint is a person who is recognized as having an exceptional degree of holiness or likeness or closeness to God. Let me point out one big word here. Exceptional, right? There's an exceptional degree of holiness or likeness or closeness with God. Now, if you are okay with me telling you that this is who I am, that I have an exceptional degree of these characteristics, the way they're presented here, the way you're thinking about them, then you fall into one category of people in my life. Other than my mom, you fall into the category of people who don't know me. If you think that fits my life, you don't know me. Because if you knew me, you would not. In fact, if you knew me, you wouldn't use the word exceptional to describe just about anything, much less attach it to these descriptions, right? And so the question again then arises, so then how can I stand here and call myself a saint? In fact, just to complicate it a little bit further, the vast majority of you in this room, you're a saint too. I'm a saint, and you're a saint right along with me. And before you object, before you say, no, you don't understand, you don't know me, before you do that, let me just mention something that's really critical to understand. It is incredibly significant for you to embrace your sainthood. If you want to live your life following Jesus, if you have an expectation that it's supposed to be a certain thing once you come into relationship with him, it is incredibly significant and critical that you embrace the fact that I just called you a saint and that you begin to lean into that. But this is where I'll concede a little bit. The definitions of saint that I just presented to you, they are not quite what the writers of the Bible had in mind when they used the word saint. The way we think of saint and the way they talk about saint are two very different things. And the implications of those differences between what we think of and what they were intending, the implications are massive for us. So you may not have had anybody healed in your name, and you may not be exceptionally like God, but you're a saint. And that, when you lean into that in your life, that's a game changer. So first I want you to understand, how did they use it? If they didn't intend it the way we intended it, then how were they intending it? How were they using it? So let me just give you a couple of examples. First one's Acts chapter 9. There's this amazing story of the Apostle Paul suddenly understanding who Jesus is. He experiences this radical conversion, and he's left blind on the road to Damascus. At that same moment, God speaks to a man named Ananias and says, hey, there's this guy Paul, this little thing's happened, and you need to embrace him and welcome him. The problem is, the Apostle Paul is known for killing Christ followers, and so there's this objection that Ananias has in Acts chapter 9 with God, and he says this, verse 13, it says, Ananias answered, probably should be more like disagreed with God, and said, Lord, I have heard from many about this man, how much evil he has done to your saints in Jerusalem. So he's referring to the people that were followers of Jesus in the city of Jerusalem with this same term that we think of in all these different ways. He just calls them saints. He talks about the saints in Jerusalem. In fact, later in Acts chapter 26, when the Apostle Paul is telling his own story of what happened that day and what was going on in his life, he shares this. He says, and I did so in Jerusalem. I not only locked up many of the saints in prison after receiving authority from the chief priests, but when they were put to death, I cast my vote against them. So not only did I imprison them, but I killed them, and I called them saints. I call those people saints. So other people are being described as saints. And this word seems to be used as an exchangeable word with Christ follower, with Jesus follower. It seems like if you're a human that follows Jesus, you can be called a saint. In fact, we see that again in Ephesians chapter 3, verse 8. Paul is talking about himself, and he says, to me, though I am very the least of all the saints, this grace was given to preach the Gentiles the unsearchable riches of Christ. He says, he does exactly what I just did. He's standing before them, except he's a little more humble, and he says, I'm a saint. Even though I'm the least of them, I myself am a saint. And then John in Revelation, he writes about the perseverance of the saints. He says, here is a call for the endurance of the saints, those who keep the commandments of God and their faith in Jesus. So what we're seeing with all of this, and these are just a few examples, we're seeing this broadening of the term saints, the saints. It's just used to describe the people of the church, the people of God, the body of Christ. Humans that are Jesus followers are saints. In fact, you add to that, when Paul writes his letters, he starts many of his letters to the saints at Rome, to the saints at Colossae, to the saints at Philippi, to the saints at Corinth. He uses this term saints. And so one of the first things we discover is this, pretty basic, but I think it's good for us to start with, is that saints aren't dead. That is good for you to hear, right? Saints are not dead. They are very much alive. And when you look at their aliveness, that means that they're having letters written to them. They're receiving instruction. They're being directed in a particular way. They are living, breathing people. They are living people who are living in specific places, and they are living a particular kind of life in that place. That is something that's distinct about these saints. Yes, they're just people living in these places, but they're living a particular kind of way. And here's where this starts to take an interesting twist. For most of us in the room, when I say that saints live a certain way in a certain place, that there's a certain lifestyle, if I asked you to answer what that is, if I asked you to give me vocabulary or language to describe that person's life, odds are you would begin with some descriptions, and eventually I think you would land on some very religious sounding words like the word holy. Right? Saints, if they live in a particular way, well, they live holy lives. And I'll agree with you but I'll also disagree with you in just a moment. Because I want to explain something. The word saint is derived from the Greek word hagiazo. The Greek word hagiazo means to set apart. So saint is hagiazo, and hagiazo means to set apart. But here's what's interesting. Throughout the Bible, hagiazo or hagio, it is translated holy. So saint and holy are the same word. We see that over and over again. The saints, the holy ones, that is being interpreted throughout the scripture in different ways. But there's a difference in what's being described with this word hagiazo, to set apart, that we need to understand for our own life with Jesus. Because when we hear the word holy, hagios, when we hear this word hagiazo, to set apart, we hear saint, we immediately get an image in our mind. In fact, if we were playing like a word association game and I said, okay, here's a word and you have to tell me words you associate. And I said, holy, the words you would throw back at me would be words like clean, good, nice, perfect, pure, right? You think of holy, and those are the things that you think of. You might even say something like an exceptional degree of closeness or similarity to God, and you'd put the W in God, right? Like there's this similarity that you have. Like the definition, you'd say that's what holy is. But that's not what holy means. At least not entirely and not specifically. And here's the problem we get into when we think this way, when we think in a wrong way about what this word means. When this is how you define holy, when you're either in or you're out, where you're either pure or you're not, or you're clean or you're dirty, you're either holy or you're not. Because when you understand, I want you to just put your mind around this for a moment. When you understand holy as a reference to your moral hygiene, then you will immediately begin to compare your life to some standard somebody gave you, some standard that you've trumped up in your mind, some idea of what it looks like to be clean, to be pure, to be perfect. And then every time you are not, the only conclusion you're left to draw is, well, then I guess I'm not holy. I'm not holy because I'm not pure. I'm not holy because I didn't measure up. I'm not holy because I made a bad choice. You decide you're not holy. And if holy is that definition, then you can't be holy. And if you're not holy, then you can't be a saint. If that's how we understand it. But that's not what holy means. Which means that's not what being a saint means. So saints aren't dead. And then secondly, I think you're picking up on this, saints aren't perfect. Clearly they can't be, right? I mean, the word hagios literally means set apart. The saints, if you were going to translate that into English in a little more specific way, you would say, instead of saying holy ones or saints, you would actually say they are the set apart ones. They are the things that have been set apart. They are set apart. And by the way, just point this out, set apart is a very different idea than perfect, is it not? Set apart is a radically different idea than perfect. It's a totally different thing. Set apart, it's like, I don't know, do any of you, like at Thanksgiving and Christmas, does anybody, like you bring out different silverware and dishes at Thanksgiving? Raise your hand. Thanksgiving and Christmas, you bring out different silverware and dishes, right? Because that stuff is set apart, right? It is set apart for a special occasion, right? Like you have things that are, some of you, you go in your closet, there is a shirt in a lot of your closet that it is your party shirt, right? Like you got a shirt where you're going somewhere and you go into your closet and there's that shirt, like you look good, you feel good, you're confident, you're like, oh, that shirt, that is set apart. You wear all that other stuff whenever you want, but that one, no, that comes out for special occasions. It's my party shirt, right? Because it is set apart. It has a specific purpose for a specific thing, right? I've discovered this one, like in houses, there are scissors everywhere. Like in my house, there's a pair of scissors in every drawer in our house. Like I am always like 2 feet away from a pair of scissors. But I have discovered that there are certain scissors that you never touch. There are certain scissors that if you use those scissors on other things than what they were intended, you are violating the laws of the universe in that moment, right? Like certain scissors have certain purposes because they are what? They're set apart, right? They're set apart. And that's what it means to be a saint. To be a saint is just simply to be set apart. I didn't say this in any other service, but it basically means this. You are God's party shirt. You have been set apart. And when you start to see yourself this way, listen, when I start to see myself this way as set apart, I see everything. Everything in my life takes on a different hue. My story is seen through a completely different lens. I have this distinct purpose. If I am set apart, it means I'm not just the everyday thing. I have a different story. I have a reason for being here. I have a role to play. There is anywhere I find myself, there is something I am there to do that is different because I'm set apart. And what this means is this. Saints, they flip the script. Let me explain this. They flip the script. They break the script. The scripts are everywhere. In our culture, we get scripts. We get scripts when we're born, especially in this country. We're given a script of how life is supposed to work. We get a storyline that's written, and then we follow the script, and we try to measure our life by how well we're doing with measuring up to that script. We're given scripts everywhere. Every time you go to a restaurant, there's a script you follow. I don't know if you noticed this. Like every restaurant pretty much operates the same. You open the door, there's someone there to greet you. You give them their name. Hopefully you don't have to wait too long. And that person that greets you takes you to your table and seats you. Then another person, not that person, comes to your table and they bring you water, right? And then they inform you, I'm not your server. I just bring you water. And then they walk away and your server comes over after you've had your water and you've read your menu and the server comes by and gets your food order. And then after a reasonable amount of time, hopefully your food comes. After you've eaten your food and you've had a great time, there's a little black book that lands on your table. You open it up, you put your money in, you tip well. Remember, we do that here as Christians. We tip well. And then you say goodnight and you walk out the door. That's the script, right? Everywhere, all over our country, the script is the same. We have scripts, unless there isn't one, unless someone flips the script, right? Every now and then you show up at a restaurant and they turn the sign around and it says, please seat yourself. And people get so confused by this. It's amazing. Like rational, brilliant human beings. It's like, please seat yourself. And they're like, oh, what do we do? Where do we sit? And they debate, where do you want to sit? I don't know. You were willing to be led to any random table with that other person, but now you're like, I don't know, you want the window, you want the booth, you want a table, where do you want to go? There's just chaos that ensues. And then you sit down and you're like, I wonder if the water person comes. I mean, there was no door person. Is there a water person? Do we get our own water? What do we do here, right? Then you realize, oh no, there's another script. And then you follow that script, right? So life is full of these scripts. And we're all being coerced into living by them. And what saints do is they flip the script. They change the script. They change the way things are going. They introduce new ideas. They introduce new moments. They breathe life into things. That's what they're doing. They don't follow the script. They have a different purpose than the script. They don't look at their life and go, my job is to follow the script. No, they go, that's the script and I've got a different responsibility in the middle of this. And they respond to different circumstances different ways and different situations different ways. A few weeks back, I was climbing Mount Kilimanjaro, and which sounds like such a dumb thing to say. Just a few weeks ago, I was climbing a mountain. But I was climbing this mountain, and our second day, we get to this plateau, and we take a break, and everybody's takes their packs off, and getting some food and some water, and we're just beginning on this massive journey, but we're starting to get to some elevation, and some of the people were struggling, and we're sitting there hanging out for a while, and after just chilling for a little bit, one of the guides, his name is Faustine, rallies us. He's like, everybody come here. And So we get over to Faustine and we get in a circle and we're hanging on his words. We're thinking he's about to give us like really good mountaineering knowledge. Like we're going to high altitude. We need to know things. And so he gathers us around. He's kind of serious and he pulls out his phone. And we hadn't noticed it, but he had a Bluetooth speaker attached to his backpack. And he puts on this dance music and he goes, come on, everybody, come on, come on, come on. And he starts dancing. He's like coming, like he's like dancing around us and doing the thing. And he would not stop until we all started dancing. And we were like, let's climb the mountain. He's like, no, we're going to dance. We're just going to have a good time. Pretty soon we're all laughing. People are shooting videos of it. We danced for like 15 minutes. I'm like, don't we have someplace to be? I'm not a dancer. So I'm just thinking, don't we have someplace to be? So he does this whole thing. And then later, I asked him later in the trip, I said, do you do that a lot? And he goes, yeah. I kind of laughed. I said, why do you do it? And he goes, you just have to breathe life into these lifeless moments. Breathe life into lifeless moments. You break the script. None of us expected to do a dance party at 15,000 feet. But you break the script. You breathe life into the lifeless moment. That is what saints do every day. They look at the script, they go, yeah, no, I know that everybody's operating by this, but I'm here with a different purpose. I'm going to breathe life into this situation. I'm going to breathe life into this person. I'm going to live in a way that challenges, that breaks open new eyes, new vision to see new things. That's what I'm going to do. And I know some of you go, wait, I'm way too average to do that. I've made way too many mistakes to be that kind of person. I cannot be a script-flipping saint, which sounds a little like a swear word, doesn't it? Chad, you are a script flip. I'm going to not say that again because I think I might mess it up the second time, but you get the idea. But we wonder, which is why I love guys, I love opening the Bible and seeing the example that's set for us. Because what the Bible shows us is the way we feel is exactly how everybody's felt in history. I'll take one guy as an example. The prophet Elijah in the Old Testament, rock star, celebrity, front of People magazine. He was on late night talk show hosts. If there were those shows then, he would have been on them. He did all kinds of amazing, cool, wonderful stuff. There's this one story, I'll talk about it in just a minute, where he defeats all the prophets of Baal on this mountainside. It's just unbelievable stuff that he does. In fact, even in the New Testament, he's referenced, he's talked about, he's this incredibly celebrated person. Like you couldn't get more celebrity than Elijah. And yet at the same time, when you read the scriptures, it never describes Elijah as being this distant, untouchable, or otherworldly kind of person, like he was floating out there. It describes him in human terms. It's just like he is flesh and blood and human. In fact, there's a story, this moment in the story that I just referenced. It's this epic defeat of these enemies of his, and it's this victory for him. And then right after this moment where he is like winning, we read this in chapter 19 of 1 Kings. Verse 1 says, Ahab told Jezebel, who was his like arch enemy, all that Elijah had done and how he had killed all the prophets with the sword. And then Jezebel sent a messenger to Elijah saying, so may the gods do to me and more also if I do not make your life as the life of one of them by this time tomorrow. In other words, I'm killing you in the next 24 hours. And then listen to this. Right after this victory, it says, then Elijah was afraid and he arose and he ran for his life. This is famous celebrity, victorious Elijah running for his life. He came to Beersheba, which belongs to Judah, and he left his servant there. But by himself, he went another day's journey into the wilderness. So basically, you stay here, I'm going to keep running. And he runs into the wilderness, came and sat under a broom tree, and he asked that he might die, saying, it is enough now, Lord. Take away my life, for I am no better than my fathers. So, stunning triumph. And then he struggles with the exact same human emotions that you and I struggle with. Despair and unbelief, who am I, weakness, anxiety, loneliness. Like, in the New Testament, James in chapter 5, the brother of Jesus writes a letter, and in James chapter 5, he says Elijah was flesh and blood just like us. You know why he had to say that? Because we elevate the saints. We think the saints are different than us, holier than us, more clean than us, more faithfulness, have better Bible knowledge than us. That's what we tell ourselves. But Elijah, what James is saying is depending on the day, you might get a completely different version of Elijah. Does that sound familiar to anybody other than me? Right? See, that totally blows our category of what we think of when we hear the word saint. We think saints are perfect and predictable, and yet they're anything but. But that doesn't mean they aren't different. And let me just clarify this. There is a difference. Saints know the difference. They understand the difference, and they know that it's not in the man, but it's in his God. It is not in the woman, but it is in her God. The writer of Hebrews, he says, we're surrounded by this great cloud of witnesses, Hebrews chapter 11, and he names like Noah and Abraham and Jacob, Joseph, Rahab, all these different people. The New Testament, we have Peter and we have John, and we've got, Mary and Joseph. We've got all these really amazing people that do amazing things, but then you look at their life, at the same time, they are profoundly ordinary people. Like Peter's just a simple fisherman. There's not that big of he made all kinds of mistakes. David is a man of small stature. He was known for being overlooked. Mary and Joseph, they're teenagers. Gideon's family is written about. It says literally that his family was of no significance. Like the Bible just goes ahead and stops and says, yeah, his family, they were pretty insignificant. Nehemiah, his job was to get poisoned before the king did. That was his job. You're expendable. Expendable people. And I could go on and on and on that the saints of the Bible were ordinary people. And as ordinary people, they struggled with ordinary people kind of things. They had fears and they had worries and they made bad decisions and they struggled with pride and they wrestled with cultural issues. Peter wrestles with racism in the book of Acts openly. He wrestles with this. Sometimes they get it wrong. Sometimes they get it right. But here's what saints understand. They understand the object of our faith beats the strength of our faith every single time. It is the object of our faith. Guys, the Bible is honest about the limitations and the flaws of saints. They're ordinary. They're you and me. And yet they do extraordinary things because they look to an extraordinary God. That's what allows them to flip the script. See, in our culture says that the foundation, the script that our culture has given us is that the foundation of your life is a perfect family, it's job achievements, it's money, it's physical attractiveness, it's talent, it's being better than other people at things. And here's what we do. We take that script of our culture and we drag that into our spirituality and we make it the same. We think if I'm going to be a saint, if I'm going to make a difference for God, if I'm going to flip the script, well, then I need to have some sort of talent. I got to sing like Mark Wymore, or I have to achieve certain things, or I have to have a certain amount of money, or I have to look a certain way. In order for me to have influence, we drag these things in. But what we are seeing here is that the size of our faith, we think, I got to have really big faith to be that kind of person. And what we see in the Bible over and over again is that it is not the size of our faith or the height of our holiness that is the basis of our hope. It is not how big your faith is or how perfect you seem to be that is the basis for your hope or your capacity to influence change. The value of your faith is based on the object of your faith. A little while back, I was on a plane and there was some turbulence. And I spent enough time on planes that now I'm starting to enjoy turbulence. And here's why, because this is really sick and twisted. I enjoy it because of what it does to the other people on the plane. Like watching people freak out. Like I've gone through enough. I survive every time. I'm here. So turbulence has never taken me down. And so I kind of know that now, right? So I get really calm. And a little while back, there's this guy. We're on this plane coming from Seattle to Spokane. I saw him get on. You could tell he was nervous. He had one of those little tubes that you put like architectural drawings in. He was kind of holding it loosely when we got on, but I could see he was like nervous getting settled. And he buckled right away. He was like, I'm just getting this thing done now. And we're flying over, and it was a summer day, and there was a storm, and so the plane, it was really, really rocky. And I look over, he's across the aisle from me. I look at this guy, and he is now holding these documents like they are secrets from the KGB. Like he is holding on tight, like gripping this, and then he's reaching over. He's got the armrest, and he's got like the death grip, white knuckle death grip on the side, and sweat is coming down the side of his face, and he's going, making these like little noises as he breathes, and I'm just looking, I'm like, bro. So I kind of lean back and I'm like, this is crazy, right? And then as I lean back, I realize it isn't my confidence and it isn't his lack of confidence that matters, right? We're not going to make it because I'm really confident that we're going to make it. And we're not going to not make it because he's not confident. It has everything to do with who's flying the plane, right? Who is the object of our faith? It doesn't matter how confident I am or how non-confident you are. It is about the God that is flying the plane. That's what matters. What matters is who we are looking to. Which is why the writer of Hebrews in the next chapter, chapter 12, after he talks about all these amazing people that are our cloud of witness, he says, looking to Jesus, the founder and perfecter of our faith, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, and is seated at the right hand of the throne of God. We look to Jesus. That's what makes a saint a saint. What makes a saint is that you look to Jesus. You trust him. And it's not how you look, it's where you look. That's where we discover the power of the gospel. Guys, this is where the gospel gets powerful for us, looking to Jesus. Do you ever wonder this? Maybe one of the questions you've asked yourself about the Bible and Christianity is this: why all the forgiveness stuff? Why is it always about being forgiven, being forgiven, being forgiven? You go, is it really, maybe you ask yourself and you wrestle with this. Like, why is Jesus always associated with experiencing forgiveness? Could it be that we just, deep down inside of us, we cannot get away from the reality, from the understanding that we are broken? Is it just that our awareness of our imperfections is the reason forgiveness is so much a part of this story, that we are so aware of our imperfections that they paralyze us, that they restrict us, that they hold us back, and they keep us from living the life of meaning that we were created for? So what does the gospel do? What does the gospel actually do to us? Well, first of all, it affirms our brokenness. The gospel doesn't lie to us, by the way. The gospel doesn't say, no, you're okay. The gospel goes, no, yep, you mess up. You blow apart relationships, and you yell at your kids when you shouldn't, and you're mean to your roommates, and you steal money, you've said dumb things. The gospel says, yeah, no, you're broken. You mess up. But at the exact same moment, the gospel says, and you're forgiven. You're clean. You're clean. And it tells us that our being accepted and our being clean and our being forgiven, it has nothing to do with our performance on any given day. The gospel just says, you're a saint. Will you lean into the fact that God has forgiven you and he has cleansed you? And yes, he knows that you know that you're broken, but he's saying, get over it and flip the script. Get over it and believe that I'm at the helm, that I'm flying this thing. Because you are a saint. And when you embrace that, when you wear that, when you put that on, and then you move into your neighborhood or you move into that cubicle farm at work and you hang out with your colleagues, when you hang out with your children and the script seems to be going one way, everything's going, you become the person who breathes life into lifeless moments. That's what saints do. Amen? Would you guys stand with me? May you be men and women who see holiness not as perfection, but as selection. May you embrace that you have been chosen for a purpose, that you are God's party shirt. And he wants to breathe life into lifeless moments through you. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. If you want to talk with somebody, if you want to pray with somebody, we have an amazing team, offers counseling, all sorts of things. They're down front. If you haven't signed up for Alpha, if you know someone that should be because they got all kinds of questions, registration is open. Love you guys so much. We'll see you guys next Sunday. See you later.